In a quiet landscape, there is a profound serenity that blankets a foreign land. It is the stillness of anticipation, the quiet before the storm. This is Vietnam. Whispers of a coming war are muffled by the tranquil beauty of nature. Here, in this moment of peace, the heartbeat of the earth is palpable, a rhythm unbroken by the march of soldiers' boots. Yet history will tell us that such tranquility is often a prelude to turmoil. Far from this stillness across the oceans and ideals, a decision was made, a decision that will send young Americans halfway around the world and to the verdant fields and dense jungles of Vietnam. It was a time of tension, a time of choices, where the fates of a nation hung in the balance. And as the sun rose on that fateful day, the stillness was broken, and the world awoke to the reality of war. Today we embark on a journey, not to rekindle the fires of battles long past or to wade into the quagmire of political discourse. Ours is one of remembrance, a tribute to the valor and virtue of those who stood in the line of duty. They were the youth of a nation, called from the familiarity of their homes and the warmth of their families. They were the brave hearts who became brothers and sisters in arms, woven together by the threads of a shared destiny. They answered the call not for glory or accolades, but out of a sense of service that transcends oneself. Theirs was a sacrifice that knew no bounds, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As we reflect upon their journey, we are reminded that they are the architects of history, the silent guardians of a generation. Their legacy is etched not only in the annals of history, but the very fabric of our society. They return from the crucible of war forever changed, carrying with them the weight of experiences unfathomable to many. For they are the veterans of a war that shaped a generation. Their lives forever intertwined with the history of a conflict that reached across oceans and decades. They stood bravely in the face of uncertainty, their youth the currency spent in the pursuit of peace. Yet the scars they bear are not just visible marks of battle, but also the unseen wounds etched deep within their souls. They returned home not to fanfare and parades, but to a world that could not fully comprehend the depths of their sacrifice. The physical scars serve as a testament to their survival, but it's the mental anguish, the silent specter of PTSD, that continues to haunt their every step. Nightmares of battles past, the echoes of fallen comrades, and the relentless grip of anxiety and depression are the heavy burdens they carry. In the stillness of peacetime, their struggle persists, a private war against memories that refuse to fade. Yet in their resilience, we find extraordinary strength, a beacon of hope for all who face the demons of trauma. They have taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. They have shown us that even the most profound wounds can be the source of immense wisdom and compassion. We owe them more than medals and monuments. We owe them our understanding, our support, and our commitment to stand by them as they stood once for us. It is our sacred duty to honor their legacy, to ensure their sacrifices are not in vain, and to affirm that their lives and stories will always be remembered. For they are not just veterans of a war, they are the guardians of our freedom, champions of our values, and the embodiment of the spirit that defines a nation. In January at the CVMA Wisconsin State meeting, I was in the company of heroes. I was granted with a rare privilege that transcended a mere conversation. Seated with 3 veterans of Vietnam, I was entrusted with the sacred task of listening, truly listening, to their stories that have shaped their lives, and in turn, changed mine. There in the quiet solidarity of our gathering, their words reached me. Not just as echoes of the past, but as living testaments of the resilience and brotherhood. As they spoke, I could feel the weight of each memory, the tremor of emotion in their voices, and the profound honor of bearing witness to their truth. These were more than just interviews. They were shared journeys through landscapes of their memories. Each story a thread woven into a larger tapestry of our collective history. Their faces lined with the passes of time were mirrors reflecting the depth of their sacrifice and the strength of their spirit. To sit with them and to hear their voices tremble with the gravity of their tales was to connect with a legacy far greater than any single individual. It was a moment of profound connection, a bridge across generations, linking the past with the present and the future. These stories entrusted to me amidst the fellowship of our annual state meeting are not just narratives to be recounted. They are lives to be honored, sacrifices to be acknowledged, and lessons to be learned. It is with a heart full of gratitude that I share these stories with you today.
Okay, well, my name's Kurt Carlson. I retired from the Air Force as a Master Sergeant. However, when I was sent to Thailand, I was a three-striper, a buck sergeant. I was in the U.S. Air Force, and I did 20 years plus about 10 months. So.
Okay, my name is Craig Kohlenbeck. Road name is Recon, and I am a Marine, and went in 1965 until 1971. And what else do you need to know?
What was your MOS?
MOS, 8152. Now, if you look that up now, it's not there because Recon's changed their MOS a couple times over the term. So, yeah. But yeah, I was Marine Recon, and it was great.
What year did you join the Marines?
I joined in May of 1965, and had a little delay there. Went to boot camp on 14th of August of 65. And at that time, the boot camp period was shortened to 8 weeks instead of 12 because that's when the buildup was really starting at that time for Vietnam. And I was in Vietnam in January of 66. In fact, I had my 19th birthday in Vietnam. So I was 18 when I went over.
Ron Preacher Clutter, United States Army, and then after active duty, I served a year in the National Guard. I come out Spec 5, which the younger guys don't know what that is anymore. My MOS was armor. I don't remember the number, 63 something. And once I got out of AT, I never served as an armorer. In those days, they kind of put you where they needed you and trained you while you were there.
How old were you when you joined the Army?
I joined the Army 3 months after I graduated from high school at 18. I came from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Totally naive politically, but an area where love of country is, you know, we wear it on our sleeves there. And they were drafting real heavy for the upbuilding in Vietnam. And I'd had kind of a rough childhood. It was okay, but I got passed around to relatives after my mom died, and I needed something. I look now on it, I was so naive, I didn't know what I needed, but I needed something of purpose. And it was like, I had no idea about the politics of Vietnam, but I knew I wanted to serve my country.
Did you feel like a call to serve? Or?
Yeah, at that time, and we had a Marine recruiter come to our high school and talked. Actually, all the branches did at that time because, you know, they were looking, I mean, what was going on and everything. And the Marine that came and spoke to us, I guess he kind of got me going. You know, I mean, this was where I wanted to go if I'm going in. And at that time they were, you know, I enlisted, I wasn't drafted because they were drafting at that time too. And I thought, well, if I'm going to enlist, I'm going into the Marines. So, yeah.
My involvement in Vietnam came, we were tasked with flying as sky marshals to fly in to take refugees out of Vietnam. And that was in April, the end of April 1975. And we flew in, we had multiple flights go in. We flew in on C-130s. I personally flew in 3 times. We'd go in, you know, pick up 80 or 90 refugees and then fly them out. But this is where my, I guess my battlefield conversion came. I was, the first flight I went on, my supervisor came and picked me up. We were all, they had a whole contingent of security police at the airport there, the Utapao aerial port. And they picked me up and took me out to my assigned aircraft. It was about 7:30 at night. By that time in Vietnam, or in, you know, Southeast Asia, it was dark and everything, so they dropped me off in front of the aircraft to wait for the crew to come up. And as I was standing there, I started thinking, what have I done? You know, I'm about ready to go to war. And I started freaking myself out. I mean, I got to the point where I was so frightened or so scared that my knees were shaking. And I'm looking around and I'm like, man, all I got to do is throw my gun down. I can run off into the night and nobody would know. I mean, that's how frightened I was. And just about that time, the air crew came in, and they got out. You know, they got out of their truck and they went and they pre-flighted the aircraft. And the crew chief, you know, yelled at me, "Hey, come on, get on board." So I went and I got on board the aircraft, and I was beside myself. I was shaking. And I sat down on a jump seat that they had on the bird, and I said a prayer. I said, God, I know you're there, and I know that I'm going to die tonight, and when I do, I want to be with you. And the only way I can describe it, it felt like Jesus Christ himself came down and put his arm around my shoulder and said, have no fear, everything's going to be fine. And it was instant. I lost all the fear that I had. I just calmed down, and you know, we flew in, and you know, it was just kind of a routine. But the thing is the second time that we flew in, one of the Marines that was on the ground in Nam got on the bird, and you know, he said to me, he says, you know, I don't know how you guys made it in here. It looks like you flew through a solid wall of lead. And I was like, well, first thing I did is I called the commander so he'd come back and get the certification that we're under hostile fire so we'd get the extra pay. But then it came back to me that prayer and that promise I was given that I would be all right. And we flew in one more time after that, and then we're going back for a 4th time, and the pilot was notified that they had brought surface-to-air missiles in to shoot down the 130s and stuff. So then we turned around and we went back to Thailand. But that was my short but exciting stint in Vietnam.
One of the bad things about the airboats was that we were so loud. You know, they had Lycoming 360 airplane engines on the back of them with 2-inch pipes out of the manifolds. So some of the times we were lucky because if they knew we were going to be in hot situations, they would send Huey's gunships with us because they could get up above and see what we couldn't see. But a lot of times when we were out on our own, we would get into messes, and we had no protection. You know, there's fiberglass boats, and all we had was a gunner on the front with an M60, and the driver had a 1911 and a M79, and that's didn't have a lot of protection. So a lot of times we would work with the Navy PBR boats. Yeah, Patrol Boat River, I think. And we liked working with them because they had 250 cals on there. And they liked working with us because they couldn't leave the channels, and we could go anywhere down in the Delta, you know, jumping through rice paddies and stuff. So, but yeah, and a lot of our firefights, we had no idea who we were fighting because we just received fire from the bank and we couldn't see anybody. And you know, our main thing traveling on the river was just get the heck out of there. But I don't know how I avoided getting wounded. In the year I was there, my boat had many holes in it, and when they would patch a hole, they would put a black dot on it. And I don't know how many dots my boat had at the end of the year, but there was quite a few.
First deployment up on Charlie Ridge, and 2 tours, I was never in a rice paddy. We were always in the jungles, okay? But we were up on Charlie Ridge, and there were some South Vietnamese women, actually, is what they were. And they were kind of walking up the mountains through the jungle and that. And we detained them, and you know, radioed back, and you know, we've got 3 civilians here, and they did have some identification. 2 of them did, 1 did, and we were told to let them go, and they went back down, and we could see them cross the rice paddies, and they went into a ville, and then they came out, and we could see them, and they're pointing up towards us, and all of a sudden there was armed NVA coming out of that ville and started coming up right towards us. And so we had what they were called a little session where we had to avoid them because there's 4 of us and there's 40 of them. I don't know if that was the exact number, but that's what it seemed like. And we're up there, and it was an 11-hour basically chase. We'd be running from them, they'd be running from us, and we set in at the night, and at that time they had us surrounded, and so we held that off, and the next morning choppers were coming in to pick us up. First chopper tried, couldn't get in because of the weather. Second one came in, and basically maybe 10 feet above the ground, and their door gunner and machine gunner just opened up all over the place. They finally landed and got us out, but they were probably there for a good half an hour, just hovering, you know, there to try to get us out. And in fact, we were very appreciative of that group.
Yeah, I wasn't really cognizant of God or needing God at that time. I don't know whether it was my youth or probably part of my upbringing, because I kind of had to raise myself, and I didn't know I needed God because I had to do it all myself. Yeah, one of the worst firefights we were ever in, I don't know whether this was real or a hallucination or what, but my mom had died when I was 10, and we were really getting hit heavy, and I knew I was dead. And all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything, and I could see leaves falling and people going down, and all of a sudden I heard my mom's voice. It's going to be okay. And then I heard the noise back, and so.
When I came home, we flew into Traverse Air Force Base in California, and then the next day I had to take a taxi up to Los Angeles to to fly back home. And when I was in the uniform and I was walking through the airport, and this little girl looked up at me and she says, "Mommy, who's that?" And the mother grabbed the child and took off. It was like, geez, what am I coming home to, And when I arrived at home, there was no fanfare, nothing. My mom met me at the airport and took me to the family house. And during the time too, it was like you were a pariah to the community. That's the way I felt a lot of times. Even being stationed at K.I. Sawyer, there was no love for the military then. So yeah, it was. Although I didn't go through through a lot of the crap that the real Vietnam vets went through, with getting eggs and thrown at them and being spit on and stuff, you could still feel the animosity.
The fact that I was proud of my service. I had come to the call of my country, and I had joined. It was heavy draft at that time. I had joined, and I was, and I came to terms with what I had seen and what I had done, and still was able to feel pride for my service. And I started becoming fairly straight and maybe cruel with people who would start telling me how unrighteous the war was and what a shame you guys had to go to Vietnam. And I would just stop them cold and I'd say, look, if you've got a problem with Vietnam, you talk to the politicians and the people who voted them in. I served my country, I served you, and I'm proud of my service.
There were times, like I say, there was resentment. When I got discharged and I went to work, and there were a lot of guys that were at the place of employment that, like, how could you do that? And it's something. At that time, to me, it was something that I needed to do for our country. If you can kind of understand that, I mean, if I had to do it again, I'd do it all over. Unfortunately, and if something like that went on these days, at this time, I don't feel that we can handle it. To be honest, I don't. The mentality it's changed as to what it was then. In fact, even back then, second tour, we started getting replacements in that were draftees, and I've got nothing against draftees, right? But it was their mentality was different than what we were. In fact, I remember we had a young replacement come in, a young guy, and to be honest, I don't remember his name, but he was all cocky, okay, like he knew it all. And I pulled him over once, and I said, "You need to change. You need to listen to the guys that have been here, that have been out in the bush, that know what's going on. You need to listen to them because you don't know it. And if you don't change, you will be going home before I do." At that period of time, I had about 2 months left on my second tour. He went home before I did, but he was in a bag. It's a mentality.
I was looking for a group to join, and I didn't want to get into an MC or anything. And my cousin came up. He was a Desert Storm vet. He came up to visit a couple days, and he had a back patch, and it was, the CVMA back patch on. I said, "What's this about?" And he told me a little bit about it. He wasn't too active or anything, but he told me a little bit about it, and I contacted, he told me about Steve-O. And I contacted him, and he got me the paperwork, and I filled it all out and sent it in. And I became a member. Well, it was all 45-1 then. We didn't have any other chapters. There was a couple of detachments. And the detachment that was close to me was 45-1, or 45-1A. So I went to the first meeting there. There's only 5 or 6 folks. When I walked in that restaurant, and I walked up to them guys, it was like I'd come home. I'd come home. And the welcome that I felt, I felt that I once again had brothers, and I've been active ever since, and that was in 2013. So, yeah, the CVMA has helped me quite a bit.
Well, when I got home, we lived in Hartford, Wisconsin, and they were starting a veterans group in Hartford, and I went there. The problem was at that time, and I didn't stay with them very long, because all these guys wanted to do was drink and tell war stories. I didn't need that, so I was done from there. I took my bike in to get some service done once, and when I came back, there was a card in the cup holder about CVMA. And I thought, well, I'm going to check it out. And I did. I'm glad I did, because it's, we're all basically in this together. It's a welcoming group. We're there for each other, be it Vietnam. We had a Korean War vet when I first started in 45-1, but then the younger guys, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, and all of that stuff. It's a brotherhood, and it's something that I was looking for at that time, and I'm glad I found CVMA. So, yeah.
Yeah, it took me probably 5 years before I filled out the paperwork. I had got out of group therapy at the VA and I had avoided veterans organizations for a long time because I got my own stories up here. I don't need anybody else's. And a lot of other veterans organizations, you just hear everybody's war stories. And I heard about CVMA, and I started showing up to events. Once in a while, Dash 2, they were young. I'd sometimes go down to Dash 4, they were young. And after about 4 years, I realized that there's something different about this group. I hear stories about where they were deployed. I hear stories about military equipment or weaponry, but I don't hear a lot of foxhole stories. And so finally, I decided, okay, and at that time, my faith had been growing, and I had been serving as chaplains for several MCs and other groups who didn't have chaplains. You know, they'd get somebody in jail or somebody in the hospital. But, and I felt good about doing that, but I wasn't a part of their group. And it was kind of cool after I filled out the paperwork. Hardwire had just become the commander of Dash 2. And the day that the meeting that I went to get patched in, before I even got patched in, Hardwire come up to me and said, "You're our new chaplain." So that kind of started. And I don't think my family will probably see this, so I'll tell it. But especially since the passing of my wife, my kids and grandkids mean the world to me. But there's something that I get with the CVMA that I don't get from them. And that's why I'm at every opportunity, I'm at an event.
Theo Hollywood Williams, U.S. Army, Wisconsin State Pro. We're doing these videos to kind of tell the story of who we are as a membership. CVMA, obviously pay respects to veterans that have come before us. I am a Desert Storm vet and a Somalia vet, Restore Hope vet. Just to really get people's stories out, because I think it's touching and some type of therapy too, to sometimes talk about your history and what you've been through, and kind of reflect on your time while deployed, while in the service, and your time afterwards, and what CVMA means to. I know for myself, and as you've heard from many other veterans, I'm sure, that are in the CVMA, it's kind of a coming back home to a brotherhood that you've missed in the civilian world. So that's long and short of it. So I hope you enjoy and really listen to the stories that you've heard. And thank you.